Good, thank you for coming back. Good to see you all. This is going to be a fun one. We're going to talk about the brain, first of all. And I don't know, the last couple of weeks you might be thinking, gosh, why is she going into kind of all this scientific stuff? I really want to get to the parenting. I really want to get to the, well, I do, kind of thing. It's really important for you all to at least have a base knowledge of the stuff that I'm talking about, like attachment in the brain. And then next week we're going to talk about how trauma affects the brain, okay? And the reason those are so important is because sometimes the behaviors that your children are displaying are because of these things, not because they want attention, not because they're just being disobedient or they're whatever, but, you know, it truly can be something that they can't help, okay? And so I think it's really important for me to put this part out there as well so that you guys can tell a difference. That you guys will hopefully be able to, oh, I'm supposed to say y'all, sorry. That you can do that and start to go, what do they need? What do they need? What do I think is going on? Okay? And even kind of quote diagnosing, which you're not really, or thinking about attachment and where your child might be on the attachment because you can relate differently to them. You're going to know that if they have that anxious attachment style, they may be prone to separation anxiety. And so you're going to be able, maybe to be a little more empathetic about that, and that it's not just something that they're trying to do or drive you insane by clinging to you, but that there's a real thing going on and we can do something about it. Okay? So stick with me as we go through these parts. We are going to do a lot more on the model today, talking about both trust and nurture. But before we do that, I really want to talk about the brain. And if you flip it over to this page, there is a reason it is a coloring page. And that is why you have crayons. And there is a lesson here, because there's always a lesson, in that, if you all didn't know this, that while I am teaching this to you, if you're coloring and if you're doing something, you're using both sides of your brain. You're using the left to listen, to take in, to process, make sense of what I'm saying, and then your right brain is doing the creative stuff, and it's coloring, and it's doing this. And so, first of all, just like helping you integrate both sides of the brain is always a great thing to do, okay? The other part is it helps you understand it better, it helps you memorize things better, all of that kind of stuff. So feel free, while I'm talking about the brain, to color on your brain. And if you want to, I don't know how many colors you took, but you can kind of see, we're going to talk about the three-part brain. Okay? Now, is it much more highly complex than I'm going to be talking about? Absolutely. I am not a neurosurgeon, not even close. I've tried to study this part of the brain and how it affects children, how it affects behavior. And so that is the part I'm really going to try to explain to you, okay? So I don't want you to think, you know, if any of you like are a brain surgeon, they're going to go, she has no idea what she's talking about. But I am putting it into a perspective from neuroscience and that kind of thing. And a lot of times they call it the three-part brain. And as you can see, I wish I would have drawn the brain up here. This bottom part, right here, we talked about it. That's the brain stem, okay? That is the part of our brain that is fully developed from birth, okay? Completely developed, nothing else needs to be done. It's there, it's in place. Why? Because that part of the brain is for survival. That is the survival part of our brain. What does that mean? The brainstem And all of the nerves coming down from it are responsible for breathing, making our heart pump, making movements that, after a while, right, we don't even realize we're doing. It's just the natural part of who we are. And you can see some of the others, digestion, blood pressure, heart rate, temperature. So the brainstem is all of those things for survival, okay? Not just like the physical survival, but it's also going to be like, well, our physical survival, but it's also going to be like, man, if we're in danger, that's the part of the brain that goes to work and is like, run. Remember how I talked to y'all, like if there were a snake right here, that it would be the brainstem that would go, we're out, we're done, right? Actually, some of you, the fight might come into play, and some of you may come up here and stomp on it, or try to grab it and take it away, okay? That's all from the brainstem. Now, if we really want to get into it, we'll talk about this more next week with how trauma affects the brain. Some of you may go into freeze, right? If we saw a snake right there, they'd be like, ah! And just like, I don't know what to do. And we're going to talk about why that is and what happens with all of that. So here's the brainstem. And this is obviously, like they call it, the reptilian part of the brain. Okay? It's the oldest. It's in every living thing. Okay? Like across the board. But when we start to go up, and this is inside, it's not on the outside, it's literally in the mid part of our brain kind of coming out, is that limbic system. Okay? And remember we talked about that. And that is more of emotions and memory, and this is where attachment comes in. This is where connection and being able to have relationships come in, and that kind of thing. So you can see in maybe lower mammals that they have a portion of this, okay? Because some of them have mates for life. Some of them have, packs that they run in packs, and so that relationship piece is there, and that's that midbrain, but it's not as complicated and complex as ours. Okay, and so we've got, and the way if you really want to do it, there's a man named Dan Siegel who has done a lot in neuroscience. He talks about using your wrist, and so like this is the brainstem, right? And then this, and if it's accurate, it would be on both sides, so it would be on the right and the left, is like the limbic system. So that's like the emotions stuff, okay? The attachment, the emotions, and all that. And then this folds over, and this is the front, the prefrontal cortex. This whole thing is frontal cortex, and this is the prefrontal cortex, okay? And all of this stuff on the outside is the thinking brain, okay? And this is where we do get set apart from every other mammal out there, because this is the part of the brain where we can actually think about thinking. We can think about, like, the philosophy kind of stuff, and who am I as a self, and those kind of things that are like incredibly higher order thinking that sets us apart from every other mammal. Okay, what I think is important for you all to know about it, well, I'll just share this because I don't think I'm talking about it anywhere else. The prefrontal cortex, when there is a deficit in the executive functioning in the prefrontal cortex, and that is things like memory, impulse, emotional regulation, planning, like being able to plan for the future. What else? I'm trying to think. There's typically like 8 to 10. And these are called executive functions. You can look them up. They are in the prefrontal cortex. When there is a deficit in these executive functions, anybody know what disorder that is? ADHD. Okay, so what I have, one of my hardest jobs is when a kiddo actually does have ADHD. So when we know that there is an actual deficit in executive functioning in his brain or her brain, to convince the parents that they're not trying to do it on purpose. Because they're the ones that have to learn how to pick the towel up off the floor 50,000 times before they actually do it. Okay? And trying to convince the parents that they're not just doing it on purpose, they're not just lazy, they're not just whatever, but there's actually a deficit that keeps them from going, oh, I need to pick my towel up and hang it up. Or put the backpack up. Or if you go and tell them, okay, I need you to go upstairs, get your shoes, get your backpack, swing by, get the trash, and come on down. You've lost them. You've absolutely lost them. And, you know, they lost you after about, okay. Right. And so it's a whole different scenario of how we have to work with kids with ADHD. It's not a rewards and punishment thing. We used to think it was a behavioral thing, but we know now it is a neurodevelopmental disorder. Okay? So, the reason I wanted to talk to you guys so much about the brain was that when kids get scared, when kids get upset, what part of the brain, well, let's start with upset. If they get upset and have big feelings, where do you think that is in the brain? What part gets really activated? Limbic system, that's right. And if the limbic system is working the way the brain works, it's all about conserving energy. It's always trying to go, where can I save energy? And so if the emotional part of the brain is fired up and going strong, guess what goes offline? The logic, the emotional regulation, the impulse. Okay. By the way, the prefrontal cortex, that doesn't get developed until what age?
25, 30.
Between 25 and 30. Between 25 and 30. And did I tell you guys this? It was like on her Mother's Day, my son and his wife, literally for the very first time, took me out to like an actual restaurant, paid for it, and me and my husband, and like we had this best time. And I was just going home and I go, I figured it out why this was finally the first time he did that. He finally turned 30. His prefrontal cortex is completely developed. He's figured it out. And he just was like, oh my gosh. But, yeah, I mean, and what Dan Siegel says, it's like we flip our lids. We totally flip our lids. This gets exposed. And again, remember me talking about, and if we're trying to talk logic to them, if we're trying to go, do you not understand? I don't want you to go to a chaperone party. There's nobody there. There's so many things that can happen. And you're talking up here. They're not even close to operating from that space. I see so many like people laughing. It's hilarious. I must have hit a nerve over here or something. We have to talk to them emotion to what?
So no, we're letting you make a phone.
We're saying the limbic system.
The what?
You said I don't have a limbic
But, yes, we flip our lid, the emotions are exposed, and isn't that true for us too? When we are highly emotional, it's really hard to think straight. That's when we say maybe to our spouse something incredibly stupid, Or we say to our kids, you're grounded for 2 months, and then as soon as it comes out of our mouth, we're going, oh, crap. You know, now I'm stuck for 2 months, right? I didn't think that through, and you're exactly right. That's exactly what happened. You had flipped your lid, and you were operating out of that limbic system, which does not have impulse control or emotional regulation. Okay? We're going to talk about this a lot more next week with the trauma, but I want to help explain sometimes when kids don't feel safe, okay? When they're feeling like so scared, or, you know, when we do, we've lost everything. We haven't just flipped our lid. The brain has shut all the way down into survival mode, okay? And a snake may do it, it may not, right? But God help us, you know, a shooter comes walking in right now. Every one of us would go into survival mode, no doubt, okay? And it can go into, you know, fight, flight, or freeze. And again, we're going to talk about what the difference is next week with those. But what I want you to understand there is there are times when your kid may be in that survival mode for whatever reason, okay? And we're going, tell me how you feel, you know, or we're trying to use logic, or we're saying, use your words, I want to know how you're feeling, and they're going, you know, and they're either just fighting back. Do you have kids that do that just kind of start punching, or kicking, or yelling, or doing all that? Nobody? Okay. Surely somewhere, yes, that happens, right? Others can completely withdraw and like shut down. Okay? That's survival mode. Their brain has learned when this happens, whatever this is, I've got to protect myself. Okay? And so the front is not on, the logic is not working, and now even the emotions have shut down. Because of that, in the brainstem, remember, it's all conserving energy. If we go into shutdown mode, like the digestive system turns off, like everything turns off. Like our body goes, nope, we're done. Okay? In fight, it's just the opposite. Heart rate goes up, extremities, we can see it in like the heat things, and you can even Google it, but like it goes red into our extremities. That's why you see the kicking, the hitting, all that in the extremities, because it's the survival brain going, this is all I've got. This is it. Okay? Does that make sense? And so I want you guys to think about that. I want y'all to think about this in terms of thinking when you're communicating with your child, when you're talking to them, where do I think, you know, where are they operating? What's going on? You know, are they able to talk logically? Okay, great. Then I can talk logically. That's the time to have that conversation about whatever it is. No, you can't buy Legos every time we go to the store. But if you're going to try to do that in Target, in the Lego aisle, with them crying, are they going to go, you're right, Mom. My bad. No, because they flipped their lid. They're in the Lego aisle and they want Legos. And nothing you can say is going to change that. Except, this is when you go, not logic to logic, because they're not in logic, we go emotion to emotion. So what are you going to say? You're going to get down, and you're going to go, I so get it. You really want this thing right now. And it is so hard. And then you just sit. Because that's where they are. okay? Now, does that mean they're gonna all of a sudden stop crying and not want the Legos? No, but the difference is you've met them where they are and they feel heard. And I know from experience that, let me ask you all this, and I know none of you as couples fight in here. I'm sure of that. Come on, that was funny. If you do have an argument that where you flip your lid, right? And you don't feel like your spouse is listening, what do we tend to do? We get louder, right? No, you're not listening to me, right? And we say it again, thinking if we say it louder, it's going to help, you know, or we get more demonstrative. Is anybody relating, or is this just me? Thank you. I feel so much better. And so, you know, we have to be able to, you know, kind of put this back into perspective and go, that's what my kid does too. Except they don't do it with words like we do, and get demonstrative and go, would you please stop for just a second and listen to me? You know, what do? Their behaviors get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they're telling you, you may be listening, but they're not like getting the message back that you heard them. Does that make sense? And so they feel the need, and the only way they know how to go, hello, I'm trying to tell you something. I need something, and you're not listening. Okay? I can tell you a lot where I see this happening when I watch parents interact with kids. A kid comes in and says something like, well, you know, I did this and he bullied me and, you know, he started it, but, you know, I just couldn't help it and I hit him back and all of this, right? And we as parents are trying to fix it, right? We just need to fix it. Okay, so tell me what happened. What's going on? Now what, like who did this, what? And then we just try to fix it, whether it's, okay, well, it sounds like you're both in trouble, so you need to go here, and you need to go here, or whatever the case may be, okay? Instead, where you're probably gonna not get a behavior escalation is if you go, that sounds like that was really hard. He was calling you names, and you didn't know what else to do. Now, do you think the kid's gonna feel heard then? Right? Then, pretty soon, that online brain can come back on, and you'll know it because then they'll start talking logically again, right? And then you can go, okay, so now let's talk about it. But in the moment, just reflecting, that must have been really hard. That must have been really scary. Okay? And it can be as simple as an offhand comment in the car of, well, you know, my teacher yelled today and, you know, everybody got kind of scared. And then we did this and this and this and this. And it's like, I don't know, I guess I'm trained for those things, but I've noticed that a lot of parents are like, oh, really? And then what happened? You know, oh, what did you do after that? How was recess? And I'm like, wait, did you not hear? Like, he just gave you this little hint about something. And, you know, we miss those. And then what happens later at dinner? You serve peas, and he goes, I didn't want peas! And you're like, what the heck just happened? Right? And it wasn't the peas. It was, he got scared that his teacher yelled at the whole class, and he didn't know what to do with it. Like, they don't have the brains that are developed enough to do what we do, where we can go, hopefully, like, well, she probably just had a bad day, you know, or, wow, she's cranky today, you know, or I think I'm just gonna leave her alone, you know, But most of the time, we wouldn't walk away from that situation going, I'm so scared. But a kid does, because they can't think about those middle things. They just go yelling, danger, scared. Does that make sense? They don't have all those little points in between to say, oh, no, it's okay. It's all right. So they stay activated. They stay scared. And so he says something to you, and it seems kind of offhand. And if we miss it, then he's going to act it out later in a bigger way. And if we're just like, that's it, you're going to eat the whole pot of peas now, and it becomes about the peas, and it becomes about the control, what is he going to do? Is that going to make it better or worse? Absolutely, it's going to make it worse. He's going to continue to feel like they didn't hear me. And you're going, oh my gosh, it was just this little offhand comment that, yeah, it was. Because that's all he could get out verbally. That's all they can do. Maybe that. A lot of times they might just go, it was okay. School was okay. Does that make sense? And so, the more we can catch those things, and again, I call it fix it or face it, okay? How many of you all are comfortable when somebody is hurting, like emotionally? That's tough. Yeah, you're the thinker. So you're like, that doesn't work. Exactly. That's exactly right. It's super uncomfortable for us to sit in that pain with somebody, right? Even if it's just a little thing, if it's a big thing, whoo, that makes it even harder, right? I have to tell my student counselors all the time, you have to sit with them in that pain. Because what do they want to do? They just want to go to the next question. Like, they're ready for that next great question that they're going to ask. And I'm like, no. You've got to sit in that with them. That's the part that changes people, is when somebody else can sit with them. And so that's the face it. So when our kids come and they say, this really scared me, or I'm really upset about this, this really made me mad, we have two choices. We can either face it with them and sit. And I'm not saying we have to start a counseling session with them, but I am saying, how helpful would it be to just go, gosh, I bet that was scary. To be bullied, to be threatened, to be pushed down, to be called a name. Whatever they just said, right? That may be the only thing we have to say. And they go, yep, that was how I was feeling. Thank you, I feel better. I think that happens with women a lot. I know for me, like, if I'm mad, especially at another woman friend, and if I can just go, you know what really made me mad yesterday, I just wish you wouldn't have done that. And you're like, I'm sorry, I go, okay, thanks. I just needed to get that out, and now I'm better, right? But if I don't say that, I'm gonna be like, the kids just need that little something to validate that what they felt was okay, and that somebody else recognized it. Okay? So that's the face it part. The fix it part is what we typically try to do, right? So a kid comes in, anybody want to give an actual example of like something, your child might come home and complain about something that happened at school?
My 4-year-old this morning was telling me how his teacher wasn't being very nice because she wasn't helping pick up the toys. And I was trying to explain well, she's probably just trying to get ready for the lesson and y'all made the mess. So I think I was fixing it.
Okay, yeah, so like that answer, and that's a typical answer, I'm not getting into you at all. Is that a thing, like a cognitive, like up here brain answer, or is that a reflecting what he was saying? It was the explanation, yeah. And it makes perfect sense as adults, right? It absolutely does. Well, first of all, teacher doesn't have to pick up. You're right. You make the mess, you clean up. Does a 4-year-old understand? Remember that those are those little points in between that a 4-year-old doesn't get. He just said, teacher got mad, we got in trouble. Ooh, didn't like that. Okay, and I promise I'm not getting, thank you for sharing. If we did a face it answer, what would it be? Like, my teacher yelled today because, she didn't help pick up and it wasn't fair. She should pick up the toys too. And our first response is wanting to go, she's the teacher, she doesn't have to, but that's the logic, right? But he's not in logic. It may sound like it because he's just like, I'm telling you the facts. But we have to go underneath that. And that's not really what he was talking about, right? The fairness. What was he talking about? Yeah, so what would be a good response to him? We could talk about the fairness, go, that didn't feel very fair that you had to pick up all the toys and your teacher didn't. Period. What do you think a 4-year-old would do with that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. My mom said you weren't fair. Yeah, that may happen. But then that's a perfect opportunity to talk to the teacher and go, this is what I'm trying to teach them. I was just trying to reflect what he shared. Right? Do you see the difference between fix it and face it? I think especially, I'm not going to say especially, this works really well with teens.
With what?
Teens, like middle school teens. Most of the time, they're not talking to you because they want your advice anymore, right? You're kind of the stupid one now when they get into that age, right? Their whole social thing is their peers, not you anymore. And that's age appropriate. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, don't take it personally. That is an age appropriate thing that teens do. But when they do come to you and they're like, this happened and he broke up with me and I don't know what to do about it, or he cheated on my best friend, and you're like, well, what happened? And what are you gonna do? And we start telling them what they should do. Does that make the teen feel hurt? What would? Give me a face it response that you could say to a teen girl in that situation. I was thinking what I would say to a teen is just like, well, that sucks.
Let's go get ice cream together.
Huh?
We're gonna go get ice cream together.
Exactly. Exactly. You're exactly, but you might just go like, well, that really stinks. Wow. I bet you feel lousy right now with this expert. And she's gonna go, oh, she heard me. She heard me. She's not trying to fix it. Because can it be fixed? Not really. And she's not in that logic mode anyway. Right? She's not gonna be able to hear it then anyway. Later, maybe after the ice cream, when her logic brain comes back on, and after she's gone, I'm never going back to school, I'm never gonna have a boyfriend again, and all of this stuff, right? Which is exactly what they're gonna say, right? And we can come back with the fix it of, oh, now come on. That's not gonna happen. And in their brain, they're going, of course it's not gonna happen, I'm just mad, or I'm just hurt, right? And so if we can look beneath that and go, oh, that hurts. Right here. And that's when the hard part comes, because we have to sit in that with them. And maybe let them cry. Maybe let them scream. Maybe let them say, I hate him and I'm never getting married. whatever. And that's not the time. We can roll our eyes as we're like, but that's not the time to go, no. You just go, I know. It just feels like the world is falling apart. Because to them, it is. Okay? I want to save more of this for next week when we really talk about trauma and how trauma affects a lot of our responses. If you haven't heard me say this before, because I know you guys want to hear about child behaviors and how to get rid of child behaviors. The first step in that, in my opinion, okay, is to think about what are they trying to tell me? This isn't just a behavior for you to go, stop, because they're talking to you through that behavior. And I believe that behaviors are responses to unmet needs. Okay, and it's our job to go, okay, they are throwing a fit over peas. What is this about? Okay, and if we can do that, guess what happens? That keeps our online brain on. Instead of us flipping out going, I am so sick of making dinner and nobody liking it and him throwing a tantrum and all of this stuff. And then guess what? We flip out of it. And then it's really not good, right? Thank you for agreeing. Like, okay, we got this. I've been there. So that's my kids. Over and over, right? But again, here's the hope in this. Remember the repair?
My mom always says, instead of thinking that like they're giving me a hard time, just switch it to they're having a hard time.
Love that.
And that like helps so much. Think like, how do I problem solve this, you know?
I think, and you can tell me why, thinking about the brain, thinking about them flipping their lid and not having that logic going, why the question, why did you do that? Is not the best question to ask when a kid is using their limbic system for survival, or their brainstem. Because what's their answer going to be? I don't know. I don't know. And you're going to go, yes, you do. Why? And then it's going to be they're not listening to me, and I've got to do something bigger and better. And that's when you might get the I hate you, you're the worst parent ever. Has anybody else ever heard that? Yeah. Okay, good. That's the escalation thing, okay? We get a lot of calls of kids, of parents of kids going, they just told me they wanted to kill me. They just wanted to kill themselves. Now, do we always take it seriously? 100%. A lot of times, is it, when we get down to it, them going, I had to escalate as much as I possibly could, and I knew that if I said something about killing them, I would get their attention. And so they had to escalate that far to get that. And then we have to, do a lot of repair, right? So, again, it's hard to think about that in the moment, right? It's never fun to hear your kid saying those things. Or, say, I have this sweet 10-year-old come in today that I saw 4 years ago when he came back in. I love kids though, because I come back, I haven't seen him in 3.5 years, and I walk out, and I'm like, hey! And he goes, yeah, I don't recognize you. Wow! I made a great impression. But I love kids. But when I was with him, and he was just pacing, and he was throwing the basketball and doing bowling, and the whole time, he was talking about how unfair, and he feels like his brother and sister make him mad on purpose. And again, I could do a fix-it message with that and go, well, they probably aren't, you know, they love you and they're not doing it on purpose. Would that make him feel very heard? He would probably go back out there and go, yeah, Mom, I don't want to see her anymore, right? But I said, you know, so, and then he finally said something. I said, so, like, what do you think about yourself when those things kind of happen? And he said that nobody cares about you. And those are the, like, you just go, oh, can I take you home, please? You know, and so again, we can go into that fix it, or we can sit there and, you know, I just go, that's really hard when you don't feel like anybody cares about you in the house. You don't feel like, and I said, and you don't feel valued. He goes, what does that mean? And I said, I bet you don't feel important sometimes in the house. And he's like, yeah. Does that mean that a lot of things that are happening aren't his doing? They are. But that wasn't the time to deal with that stuff. He was opening up already, even though he didn't recognize me, and said, you know, that these are the messages I'm getting. And it hurts, and it makes me angry. And he goes, and it makes me very sad. You know, and I bet it does. That makes me sad hearing that. And that's okay for us to say too. When we can like reflect back what we're noticing going on in us, that's a great thing for them. Okay?
Is that something that we can do as parents as well? Just kind of like turn it down on them and like ask them about how they're feeling in the situation? Like, is that another version of fixing it, basically?
And so give me a for instance.
So you asked him, like, I hate to be that person, but how does that make you feel, right? So, you know, it's more of a broader, I guess, question. But, you know, like, how did that make you feel in that instance? Or what was going on? Or how, you know what I mean? Like, is that something?
I typically don't ask that, actually even to adults, because we kind of get, I can't even think of the word, like we just come up with it and we'll either say frustrated, mad, sad,
Okay.
and that's it. And so I might want to come back and say a different word. And if you guys have never heard of the Wheel of Emotions, go on Amazon and go to the Wheel of Emotions and you'll find a whole host of things. And it is a wonderful wheel that you start in the outside and you just look at all of the different feeling words and tell a kid, and they have kid versions, or us as adults, like when we have an interaction with our kids that upsets us, you know, it's good to, I have it in my journal, like in my quiet time, because when I'm journaling, I'm like, okay, I don't want to say the word frustrated again, I've already said that 5 times. I'm going to go to my wheel in the back of my journal, and I'm going to find that exact word. I'm going to go, that's the word. That's what I was feeling, rejected. It wasn't frustrated, right? And so I would want to, instead of just going, how are you feeling? Because they typically don't have that many words.
Right.
That's why I kind of ask things like, what does that make you think about yourself?
Right, that's what you said.
Yeah, something like that, that they can answer like more specifically, because then we can go with the feeling from that, like I did, like, you don't feel that. And even though you didn't get it, you know, then I try to put it in, you don't feel important, he goes, yeah. Right? He would have, if I would have just said, how did that make you feel, he would have said, I don't feel important in my family. Right? And so, yeah, I try to go about it. We can also, because remember how we talked about everything starts in the body? We can start in the body. And a lot of times we can say, what is your heart feeling right now about this? What is your body saying to you right now? Is your heart going? Are you, or do you feel like low energy? And, we can kind of go off that too. And for them to understand their body is a great thing. I think particularly, I would probably say Americans in the United States do a horrible job of connecting what's going on out here and in our brain and in our heart with what's going on in our body. We're totally disconnected. And they are totally not disconnected. They are so integrated, and if we can understand, and I will have kids, I'll just draw the gingerbread man like this. Well, a little bit. and I will go, draw on there where you feel sad. And a lot of times they'll go like right here, and I'll have them do it in the color that they want to do it in. What do they typically do? Blue, right? Draw where you get mad. Remember what I talked about earlier in the extremities? Guess where the kids draw that? We'll put red right here, and right here, and right here, and right here. Right? And, there's just so much that you can do even with this, and you guys can do this. Like, get out the colors. Like if they say something about the teacher, okay? Maybe not. Well, he might be able to. And just like do that, draw a little better than this. So and then just have them go, where do you feel it in your body? Or where did you feel it in your body at the time? And see if they can do that. They're typically much better at it than we are because they haven't learned not to do it yet. And we have. We've learned to go, I'm not going to think about it. I have to erase that. That's just so okay, did that answer? Okay. Any other thoughts, questions on the brain? Okay. Perfect. So let's go up the model a little bit now. So let's assume, what does NEST stand for? Nutrition, environment, sleep, touch. That's right. So let's say that we've met those needs. Okay? We've been doing a good job of that. We, and in particular, although the others are still important, our environment feels safe. When our kids come in the door, they go, home. This is awesome. Okay? Now, we can go up to trust. And trust is all about consistency. Okay? What does that mean? Keeping your word. A lot of times, for a lot of kids, that they know what they can expect. Okay? That there's a routine. That there's something planned that they can trust is going to happen. Okay? And I put this in, and you can read a lot about this. But this really is a lot about, and here's maybe overall what I want you guys to learn in this is that all of these things, and I think this is where parents can really get in trouble, is we think we are entitled to these from our kids automatically because we're their parents or we're their caregivers or whatever. And of course, my first one, how many times he's heard, I went into 14 hours of hard labor for you and, all this. Doesn't matter. Does he care? No. I have to earn these things. Okay? We are not entitled to them. And I want you to think about this, and I wrote this in part of this, and you can look back over this, but as the perfect father, would you say that God felt entitled to our trust? I don't think so. I think he worked hard to earn it, didn't he? I didn't look it up, I should have. How many times in Scripture does he call himself faithful? And if you look at a word study on that word, guess what word comes up? Trust. It means they're trustworthy. They're going to come through. They're going to do what they said they would do time and time and time again. Okay? And I put this in your thing, because I just came up with this, I was really proud of this, so I hope you guys like this. I thought, would you trust a slot machine? No. Why? They're very unpredictable. They're not consistent, right? They pay out one time, then you might have to wait however long, then it'll spew out another, then you don't know how long, right? It's not consistent. We would never put our trust in a slot machine. See, wasn't that a good example?
Yes.
That's what you think. And, but with God, He's the opposite, right? And who else can say this but God, or I guess that's the Trinity, who else can say that to go unequivocally, you can trust me, I will never break a promise. Ever. I mean, can we say that as parents? Heck no. If you do, don't. Okay? Because we're going to break our promises. And that is one thing I typically say here with the trust is, please be careful what you promise. Okay? We are going to break our promises, but sometimes I think we're careless in the promises we make that we shouldn't make. If you want to say, hey, I promise every day this week we're going to go do something after school. Ooh, that's risky. Because is your kid going to remember that you said that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And are they going to remind you if you, got called into work, babysitter couldn't come, and all of a sudden you have to break the promise. You promised. Okay? Here's what I want you guys to start thinking. Okay. I just broke the connection right there. I just broke it right there. And I don't care what they do, okay? And here's what I'm talking about when I say behaviors or responses to unmet needs. I don't know how many of your kids might do this, but even though that was an unrealistic promise, and again, kids don't have that middle thing, they're just like, Mom said it's gonna happen. Right? Okay, and then it doesn't happen, the kid is gonna go berserk. You said! You promised! And you'll make the mistake of telling them at dinner, out at a restaurant, and now he's going berserk and he's sitting, on the chair going, you told me, right? And you're going, shh, 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 shh. And then you're getting mad, you're like, calm down. And he's going, no, you're not meeting the need that you told me you would give. Does that make sense? And so I want you to try to think about in that mindset and not go, what is going on with you? What's the matter with you? It's kind of like your comments earlier, what your mom said. Don't think what's the matter with you. I want you to think, what happened? What happened that I'm getting this response? And if we can go and, okay, so he's on the chair in the restaurant. If we were in a restaurant and we saw another parent's kid on the chair, would we judge that parent? Probably not. I would go, oh, been there. Can we go help? Whatever, right? And so we don't have to work, hopefully we won't worry about that, but we can go, I broke that promise, didn't I? I let you down. You were so looking forward to that, and I told you I would do that, and now you can't do that, and you are so angry at me. I'm so sorry. And so when that happens, that's where the repair comes in, and that's where the response to reconnection makes the difference. Because we are going to mess up. Every one of us. I hate to tell you that if you didn't think that already, but we are. And we're going to mess up more than once, and we're going to, maybe our biggest mess up hasn't even come yet. Okay? Here again is the good news. It's about repair. And again, this is what God is all about too. Isn't that what salvation is? About repair, about reconnection to something that was broken. And that's exactly what this is. I wanted to, okay, so this is for nurture. So does this make sense about the consistency? It's just about like doing the same thing over and over until your kids are like, you know, somebody other's kid is I'm really gonna do that? Yep. When she says something, she does it. And I will tell you, in the playroom, I get a lot of times, we have a big sand tray, and I get kids all the time that want me to bury things in there, or they want to bury things, and I have to turn away and hide my eyes and all that. They're gonna bury them in the sand, even though the sand is 2 inches. And then I have to find them, right? And so many times, like, I'll turn away and I'm closing my eyes, and they will go, "Are your eyes still closed? Are your eyes still closed? Are your eyes still closed?" And instead of going, "Yes, I told you," I just go, "You are really worried that I'm gonna open my eyes." And then they go, "Are your eyes still open?" Or whatever. And then I say, "You know what? Here's what I want you to know about being in this playroom. That if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it." Okay? And let me tell you, keeping your eyes closed when you don't know what a kid is doing is not easy. And so, but I promise you, because I take this so seriously, I'm going, "Don't open your eyes, don't open your eyes." And this is what I'm thinking in my head. Because it is so easy to kind of go like that. And if I do that one time, I promise you those kids are going, you know. And if I do that one time, they're going to go, "You did it." And guess what happens? I broke that trust. And then I have to repair. I have to go, "You know what, you're right. I accidentally opened my eyes." But I am so intentional about saying that. And I say it out loud to help them understand, when I give you my word, when I say something, you can count on it. Okay? And then I follow through. Yes?
Okay, so 11-year-old, you don't remember saying what he thinks you said. So now my response is, "God, I hear that you want to have a play date, but I will not make a commitment at this time." Because he holds me to things I don't even recall saying. So I'm like, am I being manipulated? Or am I really saying stuff with it, which isn't typically how I am? Because I take this very seriously too, but we're at a point now that I said, "God, I can't commit anything at this point," because he's pointed out all the time. And it's little things, it's big things, I mean, not big things, it's all. So I just say, "We'll look into it." And they're like, "You said." I'm like, "No, I said we would look into it. I gotta talk to your, like everything I say." He's like, "Is that impacting trust or is he playing?"
But to a kid, "We'll look into it," says what?
Well, we'll look into it. It's not a
Yeah, but to a kid, that says yes.
So you just say no then all the time.
I love where you're going with this and what I would do, because you're like, "You know what, because I care about this so much and I don't want to have these misunderstandings anymore, let's write it out. Let's write it out. And if you ask me something, let's write it out, what I said. And then if you don't understand what I said, so if you want to say, I'm going to look into this, then you're going to go, what does me look into that mean? What do you think that means when I tell you I'm looking into that? And then he said, well, it means it's probably going to happen. No. What that means is I'm going to look at the calendar, and I'm going to look at my schedule, and I'm going to see about the other kids, and we'll see if it fits. Then I will get back to you with a yes or a no. And you spell it out so concretely, but then you write it down so that you can go, no, here, buddy, remember how we talked about this? And this was my answer, and remember how we talked about what this meant? And if you even want to put, look into it means I'm going to do this, this, and this. It does not mean yes or no.
I don't even have to use that phrase though, for him to come back and say, you said, I'm like, I did not say. So, and it's, I mean, he's 11, so I'm like, So, I'm gonna just make him write it out from now on though, even beyond if I don't say that, that's a great idea, cause then,
I think so, and, you know, at 11, I mean, I seriously wasn't getting onto you for what you were doing. My point was at 11,
yeah,
and we do this too, they hear what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And if you don't flat out say, absolutely not, no way, not happening, you know, and it's like whatever that movie is, so there's still a chance.
and she hears what he wants to hear, but it's very stuck in my head, so that's a good point, I just don't even, yeah, I think he'll have to write it, I'll have to tell him, because I mean, now he doesn't, because I have committed to nothing for about 6 months, because I'm like, dude, I'm tired of failing you, so I'm not committing to anything at this point. So, because that's where I'm at.
But I might even take, and I might even take it farther to go, I want you to know that my word is, that you can trust me. That's important to me. And so when you say these things, that hurts my relationship with you, and that hurts me. I don't want that. So, I want to do this so that you know you can trust me.
Okay, I'll do that. Maybe I'll start committing to stuff. Right now, we're on this.
Okay? Cool.
I have another question along those lines. My son is almost 7. I ran into this summer because I took off a little more time with him. And, you know, we'd just be driving the car talking about, hey, these are their ideas. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to include him on ideas he wants to do today. I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe we can do this, we can do this.
And he's like, you said we could do that.
Yes. And so it's like, I'm like, maybe I'm setting myself up. And I'm like, I didn't promise. I'm like, you know, and I said, maybe.
Those are great ideas.
They are great ideas, but again, to a 6-year-old, what is their brain thinking? All I heard was, go get ice cream.
Yeah.
All I heard was go to, the trampoline place, right? They didn't hear well, we could possibly do this, or we might do that. Those words not in their vocabulary, right? And it's because they want it so bad. And if they hear ice cream, or like for my granddaughter, the word swimming pool, the minute she comes in, she's like, upstairs getting her bathing suit on, and I'm like, and so I would have to say, we are not going swimming right when we get to Graham's house. If I just said, well, we might, or, at some point, we're gonna go swimming, it would be up the stairs the minute I got there. Okay?
So how do you affirm that conversation though, without shutting it down? That's where I'm getting caught too, is I'm trying to say, gosh, that's creative, we've not ever done that before, and maybe the other part of the family might wanna do that sometime, and you're just trying to engage in conversation, you can't get yourself caught, like I feel like I've sabotaged this more in the last year than his whole childhood.
So that's where you have to take that conversation and go, do you understand what an idea is?
Yeah.
And a 6-year-old is you're gonna have to explain that, because you're just going, I have a good idea. Like these are some good ideas, and to him that means this is where we're going right now, right? And so even like really expanding on that to think, do you know what an idea is? An idea means it's something that might happen, or it might not happen. Okay, so when I talk about us doing these things, it doesn't mean we're going to do all of them. An idea means it's something we're thinking about. Okay, and that even still thinking about, that's a very abstract thought.
Yeah.
For little brains. Okay. Yeah.
It's going off a similar situation. I didn't know this stuff, so I probably did it the wrong way. But so
Welcome to the club.
I will just confess, like this is the scenario. Maybe a family member says, hey, your kids are close to my kids' age, we haven't seen each other forever, you come up to my state and, this will work out. And then, so we go up to the state and, things didn't work out, but I had already told the kids what we would end up doing. So big failure, my fault. Never
Okay,
telling them
I want you to
again.
reframe that first of all, from big failure to it was a mistake.
It was a big mistake.
That's,
So
that's
I
a big difference.
big mistake for not failure on in my kids' part,
No,
but my
on you.
fault for telling them.
Yeah,
So
that's just
I
a
have
mistake.
not told them. I have like, okay, this is the thing I learned. Do not tell them. But I have a child who asks me now, and nearly to the point where I'm ready to cry. Lots of questions. Why do I have to put my shoes on?
Mm.
Why do we have to go now, Mom? And I'm just like, I don't know if it's gonna work out, but I just want it to be a surprise. So I'm using this surprise thing. She's not liking it though. Am I ruining the trust the second way?
Some kids don't like surprises.
Yeah, this one is
Some
not so
kids
neat that she
want all of the structure, they want all of the
Yeah,
notes.
she wants to know everything.
Yeah, and a lot of my parents, I will tell them, for this kiddo in particular, you need to start your day going, okay, we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this. And I have to caveat that to say, you need to tell them something may come up, okay? This is my plan for now. This is what I'm hoping is happening for the rest of the day, okay? And I don't know if any of you all have this, but sometimes it's like picking up from school, like you get hung up and you have to send somebody else to school, and that can really upset these kids because it's like, you told me you were gonna be there, right? And so that's when we have to do repair. And that, again, that's part of it. We're not gonna be able to keep all our promises. Things are going to happen. And so being able to say that and go, I know you're so disappointed, you know, but for the one that needs all that, you might have to just say something if you really wanted to surprise. I am planning something that I know you will like, because if you just say it's a surprise, to them that might be, is it scary? Is this something like, they don't know, I mean, really?
Okay.
Like, again, they don't have that middle part, so they just go, surprise could mean scary. Because maybe they got surprised by a dog one time and it's not so good. Does that make sense? And so you say, I have a surprise that I think you're gonna really like. And so that's why I want you to get your shoes on. But I don't wanna tell you yet because I'm not sure it's going to work out. I'm really hoping it is, and I wanna keep my word, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah, I think really good to have like a plan B and not tell them, and then when it falls apart, we just go straight into plan B, and there's no disappointment, there's no, because I'm just telling you what plan B is. But sometimes aunts and uncles, now that she has like a way of contacting through email or this or that, somehow she finds out something. Like, you never told me I was spending the night. I wanted to know, and you weren't gonna tell me? It's like the night of, and I'm like,
So see, that tells you right there, she's like, I don't like surprises.
she does not like it. She's
I
not like,
want to know.
she wants to
Like,
know.
she's that person that needs to know what's.
So just caveat it, but I hope, I want this to work out, but it may not.
So it isn't a daughter, a girl,
8.
she's asking all these questions because she wants to be prepared. So she's like, well, why do I have to put my shoes on? And you say, why do you think?
Well, I wanna leave, I'll say like, well, I wanna leave in 30 minutes or something like that, like, can you get ready to leave in 30 minutes? I wanna go. And sometimes I'll say something fun, or she wants to know from the whole day. She wants to know when she wakes up, what are we doing today, like, blah, blah, blah. And I can't foretell a lot, so this is like really like, okay, I quit telling her, but now she's like, you're not telling me.
Yeah, and so you just kind of have to think, where's the disconnect?
Is it a need? Is it a need to know? Like,
Well, it sounds like it is. It sounds like it is, and that the not knowing produces anxiety,
Okay.
which then we're down here.
Okay.
Because, then she doesn't feel safe.
Right. I don't want her to go down.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying you try to keep her safe by going, you got a surprise that I think you'll really like, it's fun, but I'm not sure.
Dr. Becky, isn't this, I feel this scenario is different than me and the informal conversation in the car where we're getting hung up, because you can experience disappointment together. That's kind of sitting in it with them, and they can learn. We can grieve that together, and we recover together, and we move on together. That resilience building, which is, I think, an opportunity instead of having to fear that ever happening again. I'm sure you were as disappointed as they were, right? So you just kind of sit in it together. It's a little different than I feel like me and other mom over here getting trapped in like.
You said,
Yeah, so, because I think we can't avoid, you can't.
well, yeah, I mean, I'm not hearing the anxiety, and that's what I'm,
Yeah.
what I feel is different in this.
Yeah, yeah.
With these, and that's why I'm saying, you know, with what you said, you know,
Yeah.
let's just clarify. Let's just clarify. Now, does that mean that you're not gonna have some miscommunication, and then you go, man, this was hard, we miscommunicated.
Oh gosh,
You
my
thought I
kids
said-
have a front row seat of God's grace, because I'm all the time saying, well,
Yep.
I did that again. So, I got to repair down. I'm just trying to get myself out of that cycle.
I think that's really important for kids to learn. A lot of people.
We have an 11-year-old son who's type A. He loves to plan. He always comes up with these really great ideas. And I learned pretty early on to just stop, like, acknowledge he has a good idea, but be very clear that we're not going to do that today. We don't know when we're going to be able to do that. We have to make a plan. And then maybe I'll forget, and he'll come back in the weekend and go, what about that thing we were going to plan on doing? Oh yeah, let's see if we can work that out. Yeah, it's just, he would do the same stuff with us. Like, you said we're going to do this. Like, no,
But,
it's never in the plan.
so you figured out being super clear with them.
Right.
You know, that, you know, okay, that's a great plan,
Yeah,
doesn't
it's a
mean
great idea, but
we're doing it
we're
this
not doing
weekend.
it today because we're doing these other things.
So, I think subconsciously I came to this realization with my son, where everything's a blanket no, and I don't like it being that way.
Like for him, he thinks everything is no.
Well, yes, he has a crazy intelligence, and he remembers everything. And he, you know, if I say maybe, we'll see, or whatever, he does take that as concrete. We're going to go do this. So it's like, you know, something may come up. I kind of just like, you know, no, we're going to wait and see. You know, no, take it as a no right now. And I don't like that. Now, more often than not, I'll end up making something happen, like whatever his request is. So it's like, yay. But how do you know, we'll see. You're logically explaining to him. He already knows this.
Okay, because he's intelligent, the first thing that came to my mind is you guys come up with a phrase together that you both understand, right? That, okay, when you ask me this or come up with this, and I say, we'll see, or whatever it is you guys come up with together is this kind of code phrase that he unequivocally knows that means not a yes or a no. That means I'm gonna table it, I'm gonna think about it, and I'm gonna try to make a time to make that happen. Because you're already building that trust by kind of saying no, and then you come back and go, hey, I thought about it and I'm gonna make it happen. Okay, that's great. But I love also that you're like, okay, I don't like saying no every time.
I don't.
And that's great. And so that's what I'm saying, maybe come up with some other phrase, but again, just like you've been doing, let's make this very clear. This phrase does not mean it's going to happen.
You know, I think I get worn down as well, like always asking for this, and this. So I try to, it's like, well, you gotta earn this by, I want you to come home every day. This is a little point day of school for behavior. You come home with all twos all week, then
How
yeah,
old? Huh?
he's 10.
Okay, I thought you said 2.
No. I also try to work with the reward system, because that does, he he's still motivated by, I want to do well, or whatever. Typical ADHD kid, he's like, you know, they can't teach him enough at school because it's, you know. I also like letting him down because I know he does try. I do have a rigid, okay, all twos all day, or that's not going to happen. It's very hard for me to obtain. You know,
The reason that's hard and it puts a lot of stress on ADHD kids is like I was explaining in the beginning, because a lot of times they can't help it. And then they don't get it too, and they're like, well,
it's done.
I blew it.
And
So I'm not gonna try to keep it together the rest of the day. Why should I?
I try to give him some grace because I know that he. Yeah. But he does work very, very, very well in structure. Every hour you gotta give him something to do. Don't let him.
That's great.
With our 10-year-old last year, we were doing sort of a similar thing, and we switched it up. And what worked really well for us was, instead of saying you got to get, come home every day for a week with a good report, just get 5 or whatever good report days, and maybe it takes him 2 weeks or whatever, but he can get stuff.
That's a good idea.
Can I throw a wrench into that?
That was a good idea.
Here's what I see the problem is, and like this is just my opinion, this is just my experience of what I've seen working with schools, and particularly kids with ADHD. School is the worst place for a kid with ADHD. It's horrible for them, okay? And I try with my ADHD parents to let school be school and home be home. Because what tends to happen is these ADHD kids and anybody else we are hanging on the school charts at home. Can you imagine how much pressure that 7-year-old is feeling for 8 hours all day, and then it's going to carry over into home? Okay, so here's my point. Remember how we want the kids to feel when we come home. But if they've got things that are going to happen at home based on what they've just tried to spend 8 hours doing, for the life of them, trying to keep it together, does that make sense? And so I try to say the school, deal with school. And then at home, don't even worry about that. And you can do the behavior stuff. So I'm not saying scrap the behavior stuff, but do it for home. And do it different stuff. Like, instead of, okay, I don't want to focus on the negative stuff that you're not doing right. At home, we'll give you points or marshmallows or ping pong balls, all the things, for what we want to do. And so everybody's focusing on the positive thing. So if siblings are fighting and you're like, hey, every time you do that, I'm taking away the iPad. I want you to flip that and go, every time I hear you talking nicely to your sister, you're going to get 2 ping pong balls for some extra iPad time. And it totally flips everything. And they don't have the stress all day long carried from school into home where there's no breathing. Does that make sense? And I'm not trying to be hard. I'm really trying to think about these kids. And can you imagine if all day long our jobs are if you mess up one time, we're gonna go home and tell your husband. And then he's gonna get all of you. Oh my God! I would be a mess.
Real quick, let's say I get your idea about that.
Yeah.
When something does happen in school that you need to address at home, how would you recommend handling that? Because I see merit in what you're telling me.
Yeah, and again, I'll go back to what we started this conversation out with. If he comes and he's like, oh, did the teacher call you, or whatever, and maybe he hit somebody. And that happens a lot with ADHD kids, they just haul on. Somebody was, but if you find out, somebody was like pulling on their thing, and he was like, stop, they didn't, and the kid finally goes, whack! And then guess who gets in trouble? That kid. And then you go home, and then the teacher calls you, and like, he hit a kid, and then he comes home, and you're like, did you hit somebody? And he's like, well, yeah, but, okay, we can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well. And so I would want to like go back to the first part of the conversation and say, tell me what happened. That must have made you really frustrated. And you were so frustrated, all you could think of to do was hit him. Yeah, I couldn't help it, Dad. I believe you. Let's think of some ways we can work on when somebody's bugging you like that. Let's start thinking of some ways to deal with that. And we'd go about that way instead of taking away something and he's feeling more helpless and more helpless and more helpless. Okay, and then they start not wanting to go to school, and they start acting out more at school, because they're hoping to get away, or whatever the case may be. Okay, we can talk more, and you certainly don't have to agree with me. I'm not, I love the conversation and what ifs, so I welcome that. We are about out of time. I'm happy to stay up here afterwards. You guys can yell at me if you need to, because I know this was hard. But thank you. Can I just pray? Can we just close out real fast? God, thank you. Parenting is hard, God, and you know that. Most of all, because we are your children, and we mess up, and you know what that's like, and you know what we go through. And so, God, I thank you for your grace and your mercy for us as parents. And God, I just pray that anything that was said today that would help a parent here reconnect with their kiddo, God, I just hope it would stick. And anything, God, that was not helpful and would not work for these families, God, I just pray that it would fall on deaf ears. God, just give each one of these parents clarity for what their family needs and what their relationships need. And God, let each of these wonderful people right now look to you for wisdom and for being that example. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.